The auction bell cracked like thunder. A cage opened, blue light spilled across a girl with silver eyes and shackled wrists. 2 credits, the trader laughed. That's cheaper than a meal, the crowd roared. One man raised his hand. I'll take her. She lifted her chin, voice steady, defiant. You'll regret that. I don't take orders. The man's reply cut colder than the rain. Good, I don't give them. Rain hammered the metal roof above the market, turning every shout into an echo. The crowd began to scatter once the trade was done. 2 credits exchanged hands, barely enough for a bowl of soup, and yet a life had just changed owners. The alien girl stepped down from the platform, wrists still glowing from the restraint bands. The man who bought her didn't speak. He just held out a small brass token to the guard, a sign of legal claim, and walked away. The crowd murmured behind him, mocking laughter, pity, curiosity. None of it mattered. The girl followed only because the wire leash forced her to. Her feet splashed through puddles that reflected the dull neon lights. She didn't look up at him. What's your plan, human? Teach me tricks? Sell me for more somewhere cleaner? He didn't slow. Plan? I'm still trying to figure out what kind of idiot spends 2 credits on trouble. That made her look up. He wasn't sneering. He wasn't proud. Just tired. The kind of tired that comes from seeing too much and sleeping too little. They reached the edge of the market where old cargo lifts rattled down to the lower terraces. He scanned his wristband, and the restraint's light flickered off. There, you're free, she froze. That's it? Freedom's not complicated. Just expensive, she rubbed her wrists, uncertain. No one ever set her free without a price. You're lying, she said quietly. If I was, I'd have already asked for something in return. He turned to leave, but a siren wailed through the rain. 2 officers stepped out of the crowd, armor gleaming wet. Unregistered transaction, one said. Both parties bound under Article 7. Responsibility period, 7 days. The girl's eyes narrowed. So I'm still owned? Not owned, the man replied. Just inconveniently attached. The officers tagged their wrists with glowing bands and left. The rain softened into mist. For a long moment neither spoke. Then she said almost to herself, You'll regret this. He met her gaze, voice calm and real. Probably. But for now we walk, and together they did. 2 strangers under one broken umbrella, both pretending they weren't already trapped in something larger than the deal itself. The walk back to his place was wordless. Wind carried the smell of wet iron and burnt oil, and puddles flashed with the reflection of rusted sky lamps. The girl, Lyra she would later tell him, kept half a step behind, not out of respect but defiance. The restraint bands had powered down, yet she still moved like something that might be hunted. The man, Arin, lived above the cargo docks, in a narrow loft built from scrap metal and old ship parts. The door groaned open, spilling warm light from a hanging bulb. Inside was a single bed, a workbench full of tools, and a cracked window with the wind pushing at its edges. No luxury, but it was dry and real. Not much, he said, hanging up his coat. But it doesn't bite. Lyra scanned the room, arms crossed. I've slept in worse, usually by choice. He raised an eyebrow. Sure, because everyone chooses the gutter. She almost smiled but caught herself. He poured 2 cups of boiled water from an old kettle, slid one toward her. Drink, not poison. She hesitated before taking it. The metal was warm against her palms. You don't talk like the others. Maybe I'm out of practice. Silence followed, broken only by the wind outside. Lyra moved to the corner, curling up on the floor instead of the bed. Arin didn't argue. He simply nodded once and turned down the lamp. Minutes passed. Then from the dark, You could have sold me back. Yeah, he murmured. But I've sold enough things that shouldn't have been for sale. His voice carried the kind of guilt that didn't need explaining. She didn't ask. She just listened to the sound of rain sliding off the roof. After a while, she said softly, I don't belong here. He glanced over, half asleep. Neither do I. It wasn't comfort. It was truth, and somehow that made it easier to breathe. By the time the storm eased, both had stopped pretending they didn't hear the other breathing in the dark. 2 strangers bound by law. sheltering under the same leaking roof, each trying not to admit that it already felt safer than most of the lives they'd lived before. Morning came with a grey hiss of rain sliding down the window. The ridge below the docks was half hidden in mist, cranes swaying like tired skeletons. Aaron checked the comm display, power alerts flashing red across the harbour. "Looks like the storm chewed through the east cables," he muttered, pulling on his coat. Lyra watched from the doorway. "And you fix that alone?" "Usually." He hesitated, then added, "But the law says we're a pair now, so grab a jacket." She didn't like being ordered, even politely, yet something in his tone wasn't command. It was invitation. She followed. Outside, wind tore through the terraces. Workers shouted over the roar of the sea. One wrong step on the slick metal, and the drop below would swallow them whole. Aaron crouched beside a snapped support beam, testing its strain with gloved hands. "Hold the line steady while I weld," he said. Lyra gripped the cable, muscles trembling. The wire hummed with residual current. A flash of lightning struck close, jolting through the rail. Aaron slipped. The ground tilted under him. Without thinking, she reached out. Blue light rippled from her palms, bright and soundless, freezing the air for a second. The charge died before it touched him. When he looked up, she was shaking, the glow fading under her skin. "What was that?" he asked quietly. "Nothing you saw." He didn't press. He only said, "You just saved my life." "For someone who won't listen, that's suspiciously considerate," she scowled. "Don't make it sentimental." Rain drenched them both. The repaired beam held. Around them, dock workers started clapping, half respect, half disbelief. Lyra stepped back, pulling the hood over her head. "If they saw that light, they'll talk," she whispered. "They'll talk anyway," Aaron said. "Might as well give them a good story." They returned to the loft, soaked and silent. She sat near the heater, steam rising from her clothes. He poured 2 cups again, same as last night. "Whatever that power is," he said finally, "it doesn't scare me." "It should." He smiled faintly. "I've worked with scarier things than honesty, and for the first time—" She laughed, quiet, unwilling, but real. Outside, thunder rolled over the ridge, but inside, the silence felt warmer than before. By the next sunrise, the storm had passed. But the air felt heavier, like the city itself was holding its breath. Aaron stood by the window, watching patrol drones drift over the terraces. Their blue sensors swept across the rooftops, searching for power surges from unauthorized species. Lyra paced the small room, her hands tucked into her sleeves. "They're looking for me. They're looking for trouble," Aaron corrected. "You just happen to glow." She didn't laugh. "If they find me, they'll find you too. I've been found before." He adjusted the broken radio on the table, its static hissing like restless wind. A sharp knock cut through the room. Aaron's body stiffened. Another knock, heavier. Lyra backed toward the wall. He motioned for her to stay silent and opened the door only a fraction. 2 officers stood there, rain still dripping from their coats. "Routine inspection," one said, scanning his wristband. "Report of energy anomalies in this sector." "Storm interference," Aaron replied smoothly. "Happens every season." The officer's eyes darted past him. "You live alone, Inspector?" Aaron hesitated just long enough for it to matter. "Mostly." The officer pushed the door wider, stepping inside. Lyra pressed against the shadows behind the storage crates, heartbeat loud in her ears. Aaron reached for a clipboard on his desk and handed it over. "Repair logs for last night. You can verify the readings." The second officer glanced around, then pointed to the corner. "That cover plate looks freshly welded." "Storm damage," Aaron said. His voice didn't shake. The officer paused, considering. Finally, he grunted and handed back the clipboard. "Keep your senses clean, Inspector. The next anomaly we trace here, you'll answer for it." When they left, the silence snapped tight. Lyra emerged slowly, eyes wide. "You lied for me again," Aaron shrugged, sitting down. "You make it sound like a habit. Why risk yourself?" "Because some things aren't risks," he said softly. "They're choices." She looked at him, really looked, and for once saw no savior, no captor. Just a man doing what he could with the small power he had. Outside, the patrol drones faded into the fog. Inside, 2 fugitives shared a fragile peace, aware that every word, every breath, could be the one that finally exposed them. By dusk, the ridge smelled of smoke and rain again. Patrol alarms echoed in the distance, low, uneasy hums that rolled through the terraces. Irene and Lyra sat across from each other in the dim light of the loft. The small lamp flickered between them like a heartbeat. "They'll be back," she said, "I know." He tightened the strap of his work bag, filling it with papers, small tools, and a chipped data chip. "There's a transport leaving before midnight." "You'll take it," Lyra frowned. "And you?" He smiled faintly. "Someone has to erase the trail." "You're better at surviving than hiding?" Her throat tightened. "You don't owe me anything," he looked up. "Maybe not, but 2 credits should buy me one decent decision." She wanted to argue, but the words caught behind her teeth. For all his calm, he looked fragile under the lamp, like the storm had worn him thin. When the time came, he handed her a small brass coin, the same one from the market. "Keep it, proof you were never for sale." The metal was cold against her palm. "You'll regret this," she whispered, echoing the first words she ever spoke to him. He met her eyes. "Maybe, but at least it'll be my choice." Outside, wind carried the faint crackle of gunfire. Lyra slipped into the night, hood drawn, following the narrow path toward the freight yard. Lights blinked through the mist, one transport engine waiting, trembling on the rails. Before boarding, she looked back at the ridge. The window of the loft glowed once, then went dark. She stood there for a long heartbeat, listening to the rain, to the memory of his voice. Months later, under a different sky, she worked the docks of a free port. Her hands were scarred, her shoulders straight. The brass coin hung from a chain at her neck, tarnished but whole. When traders asked its worth, she always answered the same way: 2 credits. Enough to change a life. Sometimes, when the wind shifted, she thought she heard a voice in the static of the radios. Calm, wry, familiar. Good, I don't give orders. And for the first time in a long while, Lyra smiled, because freedom at last sounded like something she could live with.